What's up, everybody? Hobby with Cage, episode 252. I'm going to try to actually make this one useful instead of coming on here whining and crying about the Yankees losing. Because maybe by the time you watch this, the Yankees have won the next two and, they've moved on. Who knows? More important stuff. How many of you guys knew there was a auction at Sotheby's this week? Anybody? It's funny. I knew about it. I give credit to Adam Real 27 guy for posting about some Michael Jordan cards on his story that if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have known. I wouldn't have known that there was even an auction at Sotheby's. And there were two pretty cool Michael Jordan cards ending. I watched the auction end. There were some cool jerseys, Kobe jerseys, a Jerry West, not just a jersey, but like the shorts sold for over $500,000. Some really high-end items and high-priced items that sold. But I didn't know about it. And I was talking to a couple of hobby friends last night watching the Yankee game. And I was like, hey, you watch anything in Sotheby's? And they're like, oh, there's an auction in Sotheby's. It was almost the same answer from everybody. And then when it ended, I noticed Ken Golden tweeted out about a Tom Brady jersey that sold in Golden in 2023 for over $300,000 that ended last night for 80,000 plus BP. So, just under $100,000. And I mean, that's a big price difference. And Ken was like, hey, congrats to the buyer, because he said he would have bought it himself. He never heard of a secret auction midweek. So, I mean, it had me laughing about secret auction because it kind of was. You know what I mean? It kind of was because, I mean, most people I talked to didn't even know what was going on. Yet, obviously, some people did because you had items that ended for over $500,000. You did have big ticket items that sold for big money. But it leads me into what I think is a valuable topic brought to you by Bleecker Trading and Arena Club. Somebody messaged me last week and they said, hey, I'm looking to sell this card. Where should I sell it? We're starting to get those again. People starting to take advantage of the bull market. And I'm sure that, if you're listening to this, you probably have something in your PC, something in your collection that, you're considering selling now to maybe lock in some profits or, take advantage. And I went through my whole spiel, even sent some voice messages to this person, and their response was, you should do an episode about this because it's just not a known thing. And let's spend a minute on it. Let's give you a minute of real value here. Not every auction house is the same. Not every place to sell things are the same. There are different venues that are better for selling different items. I'm of the belief that high-end basketball items, and by the way, let me say this before I mention auction houses and the whole deal, before I mention any specific, because I'm going to talk about some specific places. I'm not paid by any of these folks. I'm not paid by any of them to tell you, the good, the bad, the you name it. I'm not suggesting you send it to them because I have a code. I'm not an affiliate of any auction house. I got nothing for any of them. I love doing, auction content and talking about that stuff. I've done it many times during the course of my podcasting career, 1,500 episodes and, whatnot and shows and blah, blah, blah. I mean, I love doing that, but I'm not getting paid to do this. It's just my own personal opinion. High-end basketball. Modern basketball, high-end basketball, Kobe's, LeBron's, Jordan's. I'm of the belief that you maximize your profit there selling with Golden, especially high-end stuff. I do. That's what I would tell people to put it in there. They seem to do very well with the Asian buyers, the Asian markets. I guess there's an ease of use there, ease of payment through Golden. They know that site, they know the platform, it's backed by eBay, et cetera, et cetera. Close second on that is, Fanatics, Premier, not Weekly, Premier. And we're talking about high-end stuff here, football stuff. I would probably say Fanatics is the lead on that, but let's do a little deeper dive because I'm just telling you, hey, stuff you already know. Obviously, I would say for, vintage baseball, more known items, heritage, and, some of the more deeper dive, the second layer type of vintage baseball stuff. I like Robert Edward Auctions. They do a great job of promoting, some of the vintage stuff. But anyway, here's the real value in the episode. And, eBay is great for I think the lower end stuff, but a couple deep dives. Number one, if you're trying to sell something that is a quick sell, all right, If you have it in a vault, you can click right into, the weekly auction for Fanatics and get that thing listed and do it fast. If it's not something sitting in a vault, you have eBay. If you have a belief that that the Yankees are going to get knocked out of the playoffs, not this round, but next round, and you want to sell an Aaron Judge card right now before they lose in the playoffs, eBay is usually the best, place. Just you could list it. It could be listed today. You know what I mean? You can get it to somebody to get it listed for you tomorrow. But here's the fun part. The market has matured in such a way that these auction houses, these platforms, they have relationships with consignment sellers that often are going to do better than you'll be able to do for yourself. Now, if you don't want to use them, we can talk about sending it in yourself, but you got to do a little comparison shopping. Click around for a second in the Fanatics auctions that are live, and you'll see there are filters. And one of the ways you can filter it is by who's sending the cards into them. The Wharf, I've used him. Acquire, I've used them. Fund Your Cards. Each one of them has a different deal on different types of cards at different layers of value of what the thing ends at, of how much you get. And this is important, right? Because for a lot of people listening to this, people messaging me, it's, all right, well, I called Golden. They told me that there's a seller's fee and then there's a buyer's premium. I get the hammer price and I have to give a fee. I say, okay, it depends on the item. If it's a high-priced item or it's an item that's going to bring eyeballs to their auction or it's got some real value to it, you should not be paying a seller's fee. You can negotiate any of this stuff, and people are surprised by this. You can negotiate not only a seller's fee, but whether or not you have to forfeit all of that buyer's premium. That buyer's premium is what Golden gets paid. That's their piece of the auction. Remember, you go on eBay, the thing sells for $100. It's $100. You go on Auction House, there's a hammer price of $85 plus 20%. That adds $17. It sells for the $100, $102. You're only getting that $85. There's a buyer's premium. The buyer pays that. The auction house gets that. That can be split, and more often than not is split between you, the consignor, and the auction house. They don't necessarily have to get that whole 20%. Often it can be split between you and them, especially if your item is good enough. And that's something you can negotiate. And this surprised people. All right. And if the auction house dealing with you directly is not going to split that with you and not going to give you a better deal, one, you should check with another auction house. Two, you should check with a consignor, because those consignors already have deals in place that you will not have to forfeit that entire fee. And that's, this surprised the person who messaged me, and they said, you should do an episode on this. I don't necessarily want to do, 20 minutes on it, the whole deal, but it's something you should know. Don't just hand your card off to an auction house without reading the terms and also trying to negotiate a better deal on your behalf. Now, listen, if you have a low-end, liquid card that, you could sell anywhere, you might not want to sell it on an auction house. You might want to sell that on eBay, but, you have to be mindful of what kind of bargaining power you have. Obviously, the better item that you are putting in, the more leverage you have, the more ability you have to negotiate, because that's an item that they're going to want in their auction that's going to sell and make them money, rather than letting it go to another auction house. So, take a look. There's more consignment companies out there. You got MC, you got PC. There's a myriad of companies and people out there that do it. Like I said, I don't get $1 from any of them. I'm sure I'm leaving out ones that you guys have used. And if you want to put a comment in here about, a company you've used that you've had a successful experience with, or one that you didn't have, go right ahead and leave it in the comments. I'm sure people will check that now, for options. And, if you have some suggestions about which auction house you use, maybe I left somebody out, or, another different platform. I am sponsored by Arena Club. They have a marketplace. I've gotten some messages where people saying, hey, by the way, did you see this? Look at this. Look, I just got this steal on Arena. I didn't even think to go look there and buy in their marketplace. There are interesting ways of doing it. People used to tell me about ComC all the time. So anyway, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the idea. I wanted to throw that out there. Really, the value in this is you can sell with an auction house, the terms are not always fixed. You can negotiate them. I know you think if the card ends at bids of $1,000, they add 20% to it. You just get that 1,000. The auction house gets the $200, 20%. Not necessarily, and in most cases that doesn't happen. The auction houses, they do have to do stuff to get your business in. It's like competing car dealerships, right? I mean, you can go get your Hyundai from any of the 4 local dealerships. You're gonna buy your car from the one that gives you the best deal, right? The one that, gives you the most back, the one that gives you the most free oil changes, the best customer service, the best service department, and the best price. So, I mean, it really is the same here. You have the ability to negotiate. Your card is your leverage. A lot of people don't know that. And I didn't realize that. Sometimes I take some of the stuff for granted because I've been, selling things with auction houses for a very long time. And I just, I assume that everything in the world is negotiable. So why wouldn't that be? So I just, want to make sure you guys know that. 30 seconds. I'm not concerned about the Yankees. I was miserable last night. Not concerned. What I said before the game was, to some Red Sox fans and to my son, was that if the Red Sox lose the game, the series is over. Like, the Red Sox needed to win game 1 more than the Yankees did for a couple of reasons. Number one, all 3 games in this format are in New York. So we have not just home field advantage, but home field for the entire thing. But the Red Sox were a gun that had 1 bullet. And that bullet was Garrett Crochet, and he is good. And he was good. I mean, what did he retire? Like 17 Yankees in a row last night. You see in postseason baseball, especially in short series like this, just how valuable a stud ace pitcher is. And it's not like the Yankees had a schlub either. I mean, when Fried left the game going into the 7th, he was winning. He had matched Crochet, inning for inning, pitch for pitch. And the Yankees bullpen this was supposed to be a strong suit for them. This was an area that they built up. They added Devin Williams, they added Bednar, they added all these people, and adding it to a bullpen that was supposed to be good already. We knew this was going to be a weak spot, and man, Luke Weaver was just awful. He was just awful yesterday. And then the Yankee offense, to get bases loaded in the 9th inning, you should score 2 runs there with outs. You should be able to score 2 runs with sacrifice flies. Goldschmidt being on third, not being able to run, it didn't matter. That would have only made it 3-2. But the strikeouts are a problem there. It happened in the 1st inning. They had 1st and 2nd against Crochet with no outs. You get a strikeout, a double play, and boom, you got to pounce when you can. But why say they were a gun with 1 bullet? They used their bullet. Like, that's it for Crochet. Giolito is injured. They don't really have much else in the way of pitching. The lineup is not scary at all. They're not going to be able to produce runs. We have a much better pitcher going tonight. I'm sure the Yankees will be favored in game 2. And then game 3, anything can happen. Obviously, you'd rather win game 1, and be done. You'd rather have sort of an outing like the Dodgers had yesterday, where Ohtani, sets the tone, really leads the game off with a home run, then hits another one later. And you just, there's no doubt about what the outcome of the game is going to be. Nail biter, Yankees and Red Sox. That's what makes it a great rivalry. It's what makes it a lot of fun. It's what makes baseball fun. And then the other side of the coin, how good is Shohei Ohtani, man? Makes you wish that I had bought a lot more of his cards. I got to tell you that much. 55 home runs, and then just goes into the playoffs and has 2 home runs in game 1. And if it goes to a game 3, he's going to pitch. And if they don't, he's going to pitch probably game 1 of the first, series, the division series. I mean, interesting stuff. I hope you enjoyed this. I have like 50 episodes that I could do. I keep saying that, I want to do like so much great stuff going on in the hobby, so many, pricing stories, so many, ebbs and flows, different areas that I'm trying to put my money into now as well, that I'm buying, I'm loving the content that's out there now. There's some really great and really thoughtful content being put out. If you have, 11 hours to kill, Chris Hoge does an 11 hour, I'm just kidding. It's like an hour and a half long podcast, the Hoge cast. A really great job with that. Really insightful and gets you kind of thinking about, the cards in a different way. I invest a lot of money in stocks as well. And, there's different stock content out there. There's kind of like meme stuff, 1 minute. Here's what I think you should buy. And then there's real deep, thought analysis about companies, about charts, and you name it. He's more that. It's almost philosophical in a way what he does. It's great for doing laundry. You put in your headphones. You're doing your chores. You clean your garage. I miss that. I used to have Fridays light work day and be able to put, sports card radio, very different kind of content, but it was long form content. I used to be able to put that on and just, have it in the background. I'm able to do that now with the long form content from Hosier. It's great stuff. So check that out if you're bored, if you need help falling asleep. Just kidding. Just kidding. No, it's good stuff. Anyway, that's 15 minutes. And I said I only do 5. So you got basically 3 episodes out of me there. Let's go Yankees today. I hope when I come on for our next episode tomorrow or the next day, we got a better result than today. I woke up choosing to believe that, they're just going to turn it around and today is a different day and we'll be fine. If not, maybe tomorrow's episode, I'll be crying. Anyway, guys, have fun with it. Enjoy the hobby. And I hope you got a little bit of value out of today's episode. And let's see those comments. Where do you sell? What kind of tips do you have? What kind of stories do you have from auction houses? And what do you think about the secret auction? Talk to you guys soon. Take care.